The Onassis family truly took the world by storm, epitomizing the extremes of fortune and misfortune across its storied lineage. From Aristotle Onassis, who transformed from a penniless immigrant into a shipping magnate, to his high-profile marriage to Jacqueline Kennedy, each family member's life has been steeped in both opulence and adversity. Next, his daughter Christina inherited the vast wealth and the familial propensity for personal tragedies, facing her own battles with health and happiness until her premature passing at age 37. And yet, Athena, the next in line, raised away from the familial turmoil, has even had her share of public and personal challenges despite her more secluded upbringing. Today we explore the compelling and tumultuous story of the Onassis dynasty, examining personal triumphs and tragedies woven into the fabric of the Onassis family's public and private lives that left a legacy that is both inspiring and cautionary. The saying goes that our actions are just a drop in the ocean when it's all said and done. Our achievements, our failures, our emotions, and our wealth all are tiny specks that fall into the infinite canvas of the universe. However, for some, no ocean is deep enough to store the wealth, fame, and status that their name brings. Today, we will take a look at some of those titans of society, a family so rich that, at his peak, their patriarch Aristotle Onassis was the closest thing to an owner of the ocean the world had ever seen. Indeed, the Greek mogul was a real-life Poseidon who conquered the high seas with the largest privately owned shipping fleet on planet Earth. And with it, he became so economically expansive that he was able to assuage the affection of a heartbroken Jackie Kennedy after her husband, US President John F. Kennedy, was assassinated. In today's episode, join us as we show you what it means to cruise the high seas of unimaginable wealth and fame as we explore the Onassis family, the $2 billion dynasty that owned the ocean. In his prime years, Aristotle Onassis wasn't just rich and powerful. He had more money than a person could spend in 10 lifetimes and enough influence to govern the behavior of future generations to come. Before his death in 1975, Onassis had amassed a wealth of approximately $500 million, a figure that, adjusted for inflation, is equal to $2.3 billion today. And remember, this wasn't a time when you could grow your wealth by selling books on the internet or hedging your money on Bitcoin. Rather, it was a time when money could only be amassed through physical labor and immaculate business strategy, two traits that Onassis had in excess. And his economic and social power largely came from his army of ships, an army which contained over 70 vessels, one which dominated the seas, disregarded shipping practices and sailed tax-free. Because, when you own the ocean, who's going to tell you otherwise? And Onassis's power over the ocean sparked the interest of the highest caliber of society. Not mere politicians or celebrities, but members of multiple royal families who simply had to get a taste for the financial gains the man could bring. In Monaco, for instance, Onassis developed a relationship with Prince Rainier III, acquiring the Société des Bains de Mer de Monaco, an umbrella company which gave Onassis influence over the higher echelons of Mediterranean society through the Monte Carlo Casino and Hotel de Paris. And in Saudi Arabia, Onassis was able to secure a tanker transport deal with none other than the King of Saudi Arabia. This deal could only be stopped by the government, who were forced to launch an FBI investigation on him to prevent Onassis from single-handedly jeopardizing the US government's monopoly deal. And Onassis even had influence at 30,000 feet through his private airline, Olympic Airways, founded in 1957. Because when you're as rich as Onassis was, why would you ever consider boarding a plane that doesn't have your name on it? Furthermore, with such influence across every square foot of the globe came unprecedented fame. And not just the type of fame that would cause the local newspapers to harass you outside your door. It's the type of notoriety that would cause the grieving widow of a former president to come running into your arms. Yes, you heard that right. Onassis was the only man Jackie Kennedy deemed worthy enough to fill the boots of her late husband, choosing to marry Onassis in 1968. And what better way to assert your dominance than by marrying Jackie on your own private Greek island of Scorpios? And when he wasn't viewing the sunset on his private island, Onassis was sailing through the oceans that he controlled on his yacht, Christina O, experiencing the medieval thrill of walking the grounds of his privately owned French castle, or perhaps looking over the streets of Manhattan from his high-rise property. As you can see, Onassis's life was one that most mortals can merely dream of experiencing. However, his life was not always one of private islands, royal relationships, and immense influence. Rather, it started from much more humble roots. And to show you the true origin of Aristotle Onassis, we need to travel back to ancient Greece. The origins of the name Onassis are somewhat contested. However, it is widely accepted that the name is of ancient Greek descent. Some are of the belief that this name, translated, means lover, while others suggest it translates to favored one. If the success of Aristotle Onassis is anything to go by, the later translation certainly makes more sense. The ancestors of Aristotle Onassis were likewise not recorded with any consistency, and the earliest known ancestor of the Onassis family is Aristotle's father, Socrates Onassis. Socrates was born in Piraeus, Greece, sometime in the 1880s. Now, at this time, Greece was not exactly the country that it is today. Instead of world-class amenities, excellent food and tourist hotspots, the country was plagued with a lack of raw materials, debt, and an unstable government. Because of this, the only real way to make money was by exporting goods to other countries. And knowing this, Socrates, with the help of his brother, created his own tobacco business in the late 1800s. This soon proved to be an excellent financial decision. Business became so good, in fact, that in the early 1900s, Socrates made the decision to move to the Ottoman Empire to expand his business and take over a new market. He then settled in the city of Smyrna, now known as Izmir. During this time, Socrates met his future wife and mother of Aristotle, Penelope de Log. Again, little is known of this surname, except the fact that it is of Ottoman descent. In approximately 1902, the pair were married, and with business booming, the future looked bright for the Onassis family. So bright, in fact, that the two decided to have a child. And on the 6th of January 1906, Aristotle Onassis was born. Aristotle's early years were about as good as any young man could wish for. Despite not performing excellently in school, Aristotle proved keen to learn the art of business, quickly becoming the shadow of his father to learn everything about the tobacco export industry. This eagerness to learn was only endorsed by his father, who had plans to have his son carry on the family business. However, when Aristotle was just 6 years old, disaster struck, as his mother tragically died of unknown causes. Further tragic news followed in 1921, as the events of World War I saw the Turkish army invade his hometown of Smyrna. The Turkish then began a campaign to eliminate any Greeks from the city, forcing the Onassis family to leave their home, business, and future prospects behind. With nowhere else to go, the family made its way to Athens, Greece, where they would at least be safe. However, the economic landscape in Greece at the time was still uncertain, and the financial prospects of the Onassis family had been completely shattered. They were homeless, helpless, and hopeless. Faced with an uncertain future, Aristotle had one of two options. He could choose to blame the world for his problems, or he could conquer it. As we'll see in the second chapter, he chose the second. Armed with his father's wisdom, $60 in his pocket, and a dream in his soul, Aristotle chose to seek fame and fortune in the land of freedom, the United States of America. And classed as an Anatolian refugee, he attempted to immigrate to the country. However, strict immigration quotas quickly stifled Onassis's plans. Therefore, he decided to test his luck elsewhere, traveling to the alluring country of Argentina and eventually settling down in the bustling capital of Buenos Aires. Then, in 1923, Aristotle landed his first job as a telephone engineer. From a financial perspective, the role wasn't exactly lucrative. However, by eavesdropping on high-end business calls, Onassis was able to earn a different kind of remuneration, that of business secrets. Eventually, Aristotle's plan paid off, as he overheard a new idea about a talkie, which would have the main character smoke a cigarette. Armed with his experience in the tobacco industry, Onassis decided to jump on this idea before anyone else had the chance. Initially, he attempted to negotiate a deal with an existing Argentine tobacco company. However, negotiations broke down, forcing Onassis to create his own corporation. To make his brand stand out, Onassis imported tobacco from Turkey, as he knew that it had a sweeter flavor than the Argentines were used to. He also aimed his products at women, managing to secure opera singer Claudia Musio as the face of the brand. And Onassis's idea was an immediate success. Sales began pouring quicker than he could handle, and within just 2 years, he had earned over $100,000, equal to almost $2 million in today's currency. In 1928, the Greek government negotiated a trade agreement with Argentina, making Onassis the consul general. Such a position gave Onassis the ability to not only sell tobacco, but to manufacture cigarettes and trade various commodities. And by the time he was 25, he was officially a millionaire, even by the standards of 1920s dollars. However, as the business started to grow, Aristotle realized that he was on the wrong side of the table. Despite earning a life-changing sum of money, he noticed that the shipping companies who transported the tobacco he sold made more than the manufacturers who sold the final product. So, in 1932, while every other entrepreneur was battening down the hatches to survive the harsh winter of the Great Depression, Aristotle made the decision to change the direction of his business, with the intention of controlling the ocean. His venture started with the purchase of 2 ships, which he was able to buy at a heavy discount thanks to the poor economic landscape. Naming them after his parents, Onassis's voyage officially began as he started running Atlantic trade routes. An oil tanker joined the ranks in 1938, followed by a further 2 the next year. And these ships opened up opportunities to ship commodities like oil between the US and Japan. And even when trade stopped during World War II, Onassis was able to profit by leasing his fleet to the Allies. Fueled by determination and the prospects of financial domination, Aristotle began an aggressive expansion of his fleet in 1945. By 1955, he had increased his marine power 15-fold, and by disguising his ships with the flag of Panama, he was able to avoid any kind of transport tax, massively improving his profits. Subsequent business opportunities arose as Onassis built his empire. He, for instance, purchased a majority share in the Société des Bains de Mer in 1953 before starting his own airline, Olympic Airways, in 1957. However, the 1950s also saw Onassis embroiled in legal trouble, as the FBI launched an investigation after he attempted to strike an oil contract with the King of Saudi Arabia. Coupled with his public disregard for marital loyalty, it's safe to say that he wasn't well liked in the US throughout his rise. Nevertheless, his fleet reached its peak in 1975, when Aristotle controlled over 70 vessels, with a combined shipping power of 2.5 million tons. What had started out with $60 and a dream had turned into an empire worth $500 million. Thus, Aristotle Onassis already had the money and the power. What he wanted next was the women. Throughout his epic rise, Onassis had multiple relationships which propelled him to new levels of social status and admiration. These relationships, however, also showed the dark side of this incredible entrepreneur. Onassis's dating life kicked off in the 1930s when he became engaged to Ingeborg Dedichen, the daughter of a Swedish shipowner, who Onassis was likely trying to build a relationship with. However, the relationship quickly fell apart, as Onassis engaged in episodes of drunken rage, which at their worst ended in domestic violence. Throughout the 1930s, Onassis continued to engage in a string of romantic flings, dating multiple famous women such as Greta Garbo. Then, in 1946, he met his future wife, Athina Livanos, the daughter of the richest shipping merchant in the world. Despite Onassis being almost double her age, they married, having 2 children in the following years. However, time proved that the relationship was far from healthy, and by the 50s, both were engaged in affairs. In 1957, for instance, Onassis publicly flaunted his relationship with Maria Callas, who was at the time regarded as one of the most beautiful opera singers in the world. Tired of the broken relationship, Athena divorced Aristotle in 1960, leaving Onassis open to remarrying another high-profile figure. 3 years later, tragedy unfolded in America as the well-loved President of the United States, John F. Kennedy, was brutally assassinated. Hearing of this news while residing in Hamburg, Onassis immediately flew to America to pay his respects. or so he wanted the public to believe. On the surface, Onassis's presence at Franklin's funeral was motivated out of respect. However, in reality, some said he was there for one reason: Jackie Kennedy. Whatever his motives, Jackie Kennedy was, being recently widowed and having lost her child in August, alone and in a state of unimaginable depression. And so, later in the year, Onassis invited both Jackie and her sister Lee Radziwill to a party on his private yacht. They accepted the invitation, bringing powerful political figures such as Prince Stanislas Radziwill, the husband of Lee, along. During the cruise, Onassis did everything in his power to win over the affection of the former First Lady. He took her to Istanbul, Crete, and the Peloponnesian coast, and he even showed Jackie the ancient city of Smyrna, where the couple were photographed holding hands. Finally, Onassis took Jackie to his private island, where he wished for so much privacy that he removed the island from public maps. Whether anything romantic happened on the cruise is debatable. However, it was clear that the two grew extremely close after this cruise, and in time, despite receiving heavy criticism from the press, Jackie only grew closer to the much older and much wealthier billionaire. Soon, they were a match made in political heaven. Onassis had the lifestyle that Jackie craved and grown accustomed to, and Jackie had the public figure and influence that Aristotle had never been able to obtain. And so in 1968, just 5 years after the death of her legendary former husband, Jackie married Onassis on his private island. Jackie and Aristotle never had any children together. However, Onassis did have 2 children with his previous wife, Athena Livanos, Alexander, and Christina. Alexander was born in 1948 and immediately indoctrinated into the Onassis business. He never received a formal education, instead choosing to work under his father for just $12,000 a year. Despite not being spoiled, Alexander appears to not have had the same drive as his father. He was frequently described as a brat, and some even suggested that he was intimidated by his father's success. Nevertheless, Alexander was eventually appointed the head of his father's private airline, Olympic Aviation. However, this decision would unfortunately lead to a tragic early death. In 1973, when Alexander was just 24 years old, he suffered a terrible plane crash. Though surviving the initial crash, he passed from injuries just a day later. Therefore, not only did Aristotle have to bury his only son, but he also had to bury his only male heir. And 2 years later, on the 15th of March 1975, Onassis joined his son after suffering respiratory failure. The only other living heir, Christina, therefore inherited $500 million from her father, including his private island and other properties. Christina went on to have one child, Athena, whom she showered with more gifts than a child could ever wish for. However, despite having all of the money in the world, Christina sadly suffered from a fatal heart attack in 1988, when she was just 38 years old. Athena thus remains the only surviving descendant of the Onassis empire, but originally didn't see any of her grandfather's wealth. This was because her father, Thierry Roussel, wanted Athena to live a relatively normal life, and so he took her to Switzerland, where despite being given $13 million a year to raise the girl by Christina's legal team, Thierry never financially spoiled his daughter so that she could learn the value of money, and it was eventually agreed that Athena would gain access to her father's estate on her 18th birthday. The pair later engaged in a legal battle as Thierry attempted to delay his daughter from receiving her inheritance after she announced that she was going to marry equestrian athlete Alvaro Alonso. However, Thierry suspected that Alonso only wanted to get married to gain access to half of Onassis's empire. Despite this, he eventually lost in court. And on the 29th of January 2003, Athena celebrated her 18th birthday, gaining access to her share of the Onassis's empire. While concrete figures were never mentioned, it's estimated that her inheritance was close to $500 million. Now, Athena also doesn't keep much of a public profile. However, in 2003, she was able to buy an $8.6 million property in Sao Paulo, so it's safe to say that she isn't living paycheck to paycheck. She married Alpanso in 2005, before divorcing him in 2017 after he reportedly attempted to take her wealth as his own. Tactfully, she didn't have to pay him a penny. In this way, we guess you could say that her late father got the last laugh in an "I told you so" moment, and he isn't rolling over in his grave. Athena was also meant to receive the management rights of Aristotle's charity, which he set up after the death of his son when she turned 21. However, the then managers of the charity decided to change the foundation's charter, effectively removing any right that Athena had to its inheritance. Nevertheless, Athina Onassis remains one of the richest young women in the world today, and despite being divided over the years, Aristotle Onassis's financial legacy continues to thrive decades after his death. When you think of the name Onassis, visions of mid-century eye-watering wealth and global intrigue might spring to mind. Yet, it is in the sumptuous properties Jackie and Aristotle lived that perhaps are the most revealing about this enigmatic couple. Indeed, these properties are more than mere homes. They are grand stages where the secrets of high society play out against backdrops ranging from the crystal-clear Aegean Sea to the vibrant pulse of Manhattan's concrete jungle. Therefore, in today's episode, we invite you into the heart of the Onassis legacy. From Aristotle's secluded Greek island, a paradise hidden away from the prying eyes of the paparazzi, to Jackie Onassis' chic Manhattan hideaway, we explore these architectural marvels that are enduring symbols of a lavish heritage, meticulously crafted and preserved through generations. Number 1. 47 Grosvenor Square, Mayfair, London. First on our list of the old money mansions in the Onassis family is nestled in London's swanky Mayfair district, at 47 Grosvenor Square to be precise. Indeed, this was no modest London flat. It was a first-floor masterpiece of 5,000 square feet, snatched up by Aristotle Onassis and his crew in the 1960s and held tightly until the end of the 1970s. And before the Onassises came along, the place was the pride of Sir John Anderson, Winston Churchill's wartime right-hand man and the Royal Opera House's bigwig. Next, Aristotle Onassis, by then a name synonymous with extravagance, turned this apartment into a glamorous London hotspot. His sister Artemis used it as her city retreat, where Jackie Onassis rubbed elbows with the elite, alongside her sister Lee Radziwill and her daughter Caroline Kennedy, who was studying in London. Therefore, it was practically the backdrop for high society drama. As you can imagine, the apartment had everything you'd expect for a family whose fortune was the stuff of legend. 5 bedrooms, 3 opulent reception rooms, a library that made reading a luxury, and a kitchen where cooking was practically an art form. But the crowning jewel was the 63-foot balcony stretching out over Grosvenor Square. In the entire neo-Georgian block, it was the only one with such a commanding view. Clearly, the Onassises didn't do anything by halves, and inside, the design was meant to dazzle. Floor-to-ceiling windows let natural light flood the rooms, giving the whole place a glow that said luxury without uttering a word. There was a bar for the highball set, and a primary bedroom suite so sprawling it could double as a penthouse. The apartment was the gold standard of high society venues during the Onassis era, making it the go-to spot for London's glitterati. Then, as the 1980s rolled in, Edmund Safra, a banker with a taste for the opulent, acquired the property. He and his wife Lily continued the tradition of hosting grand events. The 1988 ball, for instance, boasted a guest list that would make any socialite's mouth water, echoing the glamorous gatherings of the Onassis days. Tragically, Edmund Safra's life ended in a blaze in 1999, but Lily kept the legend alive. Therefore, the Onassis apartment at Grosvenor Square was more than just a prime piece of real estate. It was a cultural icon of the 1960s and 70s, and today it remains a coveted prize, symbolizing the pinnacle of exclusive living. Number 2. 1040 Fifth Avenue, New York City. Next on our list of old money mansions of the Onassis family is one that was close to Jackie Kennedy's heart and stayed with her throughout the duration of the Onassis marriage. Here, Jackie found a sanctuary in a 15-room apartment on the 15th floor of 1040 Fifth Avenue, which she snapped up in 1964 for a cool $250,000 after President Kennedy's assassination forced her to leave Washington, D.C. And this choice of residence wasn't just a home, it was a vantage point with jaw-dropping views of Central Park and the reservoir that would soon be named after her. Designed by the acclaimed architect Rosario Candela in 1930, 1040 Fifth Avenue is a pinnacle of Upper East Side luxury. With just 27 apartments spread over 17 stories, the limestone-clad building exudes exclusivity. And though its facade might look plain, apart from a few sculpted faces at the 5th story, but it has weathered many repairs with grace. The distinctive roofline, a romantic mishmash of arcades, chimneys and portals, adds a touch of architectural charm, and the canopied entrance, with its cast-iron doors and lush sidewalk landscaping, amplifies the building's grandeur. Jackie's penthouse was a full-floor affair with sweeping views of Central Park and the reservoir. Her interiors, filled with art and furnishings from her White House days, were as inviting as they were understated. And according to her friend Nancy Tuckerman, the apartment was more about warmth than opulence, for Jackie preferred to maintain the decor, only replacing worn upholstery with identical fabrics. Furthermore, Candela's design genius was evident throughout. Each unit had a grand entrance gallery leading to a spacious living room, library and dining room, all boasting their own fireplaces. The large kitchen, pantry, maid's room and servants' hall were tucked away discreetly, and Jackie's abode had 4 or 5 bedrooms, each with a bath and most with walk-in closets. Her particular setup included maid's rooms, a library, 3 fireplaces and a balcony overlooking Central Park, striking a perfect balance between luxury and homeliness. The space was filled with books, skirted sofas, and a plethora of table lamps, creating an inviting ambience. In 1968, Jackie's marriage to Greek shipping magnate Aristotle Onassis marked a significant shift. This new chapter, while still under intense public scrutiny, provided her with stability and the means to focus on her philanthropic work. Although she spent some time in Greece, 1040 Fifth Avenue remained her anchor in New York, a stable home base amidst the whirlwind of her life. After Aristotle's death in 1975, Jackie faced profound loss, but also embraced a new phase. With her children growing up, she turned to publishing, joining Viking Press, and later moving to Doubleday as a senior editor. And her publishing career was both successful and fulfilling, merging her passion for literature with her professional pursuits. When Jackie passed away in 1994, her Fifth Avenue apartment was sold to David Koch for $9.5 million in 1995. It has since changed hands a few times, its value soaring with the years. But the building remains one of New York City's elite addresses, a nod to its architectural brilliance and the illustrious lives it has housed. Number 3, Scorpios Island, Greece. Next on our list, quite naturally, is Scorpios, a dreamy private island nestled in the Ionian Sea that has a history that reads like a billionaire's fantasy. In 1963, Aristotle Onassis snapped up the 205-acre patch of paradise for just 3.5 million drachmas, roughly $14,024. And what was then a barren outcrop soon became his personal playground, a lavish retreat for his family and a backdrop for his grand lifestyle. But Onassis wasn't about to settle for just any island. He imported over 200 varieties of trees and had sand shipped from Salamina to craft the idyllic East Beach. He then built a family compound complete with 3 residences, a helipad, a marina, and all the trimmings to accommodate his prized yacht, the Christina O, which we'll talk about in a second. One of the island's standout features was the Pink House, a villa reserved for his wife, Jacqueline Kennedy Onassis. It became her personal retreat on the island after her marriage to Aristotle Onassis in 1968, and although the Pink House and its surrounding areas were known for their seclusion, this didn't always protect her from paparazzi. This was sadly evidenced by the infamous incident in 1971 when she was photographed nude on a Scorpios beach. Now, the island also hosted a quaint Greek Orthodox chapel where Onassis and Kennedy tied the knot in 1968, with a select 40 guests witnessing the private ceremony. Then, Scorpios soon became the go-to spot for high-profile gatherings. Hollywood royalty, political bigwigs, and cultural icons flocked to the island, drawn by its natural beauty and Onassis's legendary hospitality. Following Onassis's death in 1975, the island passed to his daughter Christina and then to his granddaughter Athina Onassis Roussel, the last remaining heir. But in 2013, Athena sold Scorpios to Russian billionaire Dmitry Rybolovlev for a staggering $153 million. And Rybolovlev, previously the owner of AS Monaco Football Club, had grand plans for the island. He invested as much as €200 million into transforming Scorpios into a luxury resort designed by the acclaimed Norwegian firm Snuheta. The plans include a 60-bedroom resort, complete with a helipad, spa, super yacht marina, stables, a soccer field, and an amphitheatre. The resort will reportedly be available for VIP rentals, with weekly rates ranging from €950,000 to €1.8 million, accommodating up to 50 guests at a time. The island will also feature a fibre optic network, wastewater treatment facilities, desalination units, and electric car charging stations. Furthermore, many of the new structures will be built underground and camouflaged with greenery to preserve the island's lush, natural allure. Sometime this summer, Scorpios is said to be set for opening doors to a new generation of elite visitors, offering an exclusive retreat where privacy and luxury are guaranteed. However, the next spot on our list isn't exactly something you can just let the general public get their hands on. Number 4. The Christina O yacht. The next place on our listed isn't exactly a swanky London apartment or a breathtaking private island, but it is a boat so luxurious that it is, arguably, more stunning than most mansions on land. And the Christina O, once a humble Canadian anti-submarine frigate, is now a legend among luxury yachts. Born in 1942 as HMCS Stormont, it bravely navigated the Battle of the Atlantic and even played a role in the Normandy landings of 1944. After the war, it caught the eye of Aristotle Onassis, who snagged it for a mere $34,000. Onassis saw potential beyond its military past and poured $4 million, today's equivalent of about $50 million, into turning it into the epitome of opulence. Now, architect Cesar Pinau took the helm of this transformation, creating an interior so lavish it redefined what a luxury yacht could be. And among its jaw-dropping features were a mosaic tiled swimming pool that could morph into a dance floor at the flick of a switch, a bar crafted from the timbers of a sunken Spanish galleon with orca whale teeth engravings, and 18 over-the-top staterooms. The yacht was then rechristened Christina O after Onassis' daughter, cementing its status as a symbol of the high life. Needless to say, the yacht quickly became the playground of Hollywood royalty, political heavyweights, and cultural icons. Marilyn Monroe, John Wayne, Elizabeth Taylor, Grace Kelly, Frank Sinatra, John F. Kennedy, and Winston Churchill all graced its decks, and its interiors and amenities set the gold standard for extravagance. Following Onassis' death in 1975, the yacht was handed to his daughter Christina and then donated to the Greek government. Sadly, it fell into a state of neglect until 1998, when another Greek shipping magnate, John Paul Papanikolaou, affectionately known as Big John, swooped in to save the day. With an additional $50 million, Papanikolaou launched a 3-year restoration mission to revive the yacht's former splendor. But restoring the Christina O was no small feat, and the project was likened to solving a Rubik's Cube, with Papanikolaou overseeing every detail. The task was to scale the yacht from 24 to 34 guests and upgrade from 10 to 17 suites, all while maintaining its iconic charm. But the narrow hull, originally designed for speed rather than luxury, posed a unique challenge. Despite these hurdles, the restoration team nailed it, meticulously recreating original elements like the versatile mosaic tiled pool, the lapis lazuli fireplace, and the pastel-themed guest cabins. Ari's bar, famous for its whale penis skin upholstery and engraved orca whale teeth, was also painstakingly restored to its former glory. Today, the Christina O is not just a relic of mid-20th century excess, but a star in its own right. It has made appearances in popular culture, featured in Netflix's The Crown and the 2022 film Triangle of Sadness, and its guest list remains exclusive, recently hosting a family reunion for media mogul Rupert Murdoch. The yacht's allure endures, captivating a new generation of the rich and famous with its unrivaled grandeur. Number 5. The Horse Farm in New Jersey. In 1974, 1 year before the death of her husband Aristotle Onassis, Jackie Kennedy Onassis made a charming addition to her portfolio, scooping up a converted barn on nearly 10 acres in Peapack, Gladstone, New Jersey, for a cool $200,000. and this picturesque yellow and white property was a nod to her penchant for understated elegance. You see, Jackie wasn't just after a house. She sought refuge in a land of rolling pastures, ample horse trails, and a level of privacy that made it the perfect hideaway. But before her Peapack Gladstone acquisition, Jackie had been leasing a rather unremarkable farmhouse in Bernardsville since 1965. This so-called badly made-over barn, rented from Mr. and Mrs. Douglas Burden, wasn't exactly a masterpiece, but it was close enough to the area's renowned equestrian scene, and the local obsession with fox hunting and bridle paths made it a haven for Jackie and her love for horseback riding. Then, Jackie's fascination with Somerset Hills ignited in October 1965 when whispers of her presence began circulating. Seen having lunch at the Far Hills Inn with her Secret Service entourage, she quickly became the subject of local intrigue. In Bernardsville, Jackie quickly became a fixture in the local horse riding community, and Peapack Gladstone, nestled in New Jersey's horse country, has long been synonymous with equestrian pursuits. Thus, Jackie's devotion to the area and its equestrian charm was evident in her decision to purchase the Peapack Gladstone property. She cherished the annual Blessing of the Hounds, where members of the Essex Hunt Club gathered on Thanksgiving morning for a traditional fox hunt. And though the property was originally a barn, which Jackie transformed into a cosy and inviting home, the structure retained much of its rustic charm, with exposed wooden beams and a high vaulted ceiling that added to the spacious feel of the interior. And the exterior, painted in a warm yellow hue with crisp white trim, blended harmoniously with the surrounding landscape. Large windows were a prominent feature, allowing natural light to flood the interior and offering stunning views of the rolling hills and lush greenery that characterized the Peapack Gladstone area. Even after her passing in 1994, Jackie's influence on the property lingered, though it was sold by her family in 1997 to neighbor and friend Marjorie MacDonald Walsh for $1.47 million. Sadly, it was later demolished to make way for a different building, but Jackie's legacy as the Queen of Peapack Gladstone lives on. Number 6. Redgate Farm, Martha's Vineyard. And last on our list is a legendary property Jackie put her heart and soul in as she mourned the loss of Aristotle. You see, in 1979, Jacqueline Kennedy Onassis turned a lifelong dream into reality by snapping up 340 acres of untouched paradise on Martha's Vineyard's southwestern tip. And this patch of heaven, named Redgate Farm, came with a mile of pristine Atlantic beachfront, 2 freshwater ponds, meadows, and a slew of wetlands. A sheep farm in its previous life, the property was blessed with a modest hunting cabin at the time of purchase. Jackie, never one to settle for less, enlisted architect Hugh Newell Jacobson to craft a traditional Cape Cod-style main house and a 2-story guest house, which were completed in 1981. But the transformation didn't stop there. Jackie's friend Rachel Bunny Mellon, who had previously put her magic touch on the White House rose garden, was brought in to sprinkle some landscaping fairy dust on the estate. Therefore, Redgate Farm wasn't just about eye candy. It was an all-out nature lover's playground. The main house came with 5 ensuite bedrooms, 2 studios or offices, and views of the booming blue sea from every room but the dining room. On the property, there was also a 3-bedroom caretaker's house, a barn, 2 garages, one with a 2-bedroom apartment, a climate-controlled storage building, and a boathouse. Additionally, outdoor perks included a private mile-long stretch of Atlantic beach with dunes, 2 freshwater ponds, a vegetable garden, a blueberry patch, an outdoor pool, and a tennis court. The landscape boasted windswept shores, wild dunes, meadows, and wetlands, making it a natural wonderland where Jackie and her family could bask in the great outdoors. Indeed, Caroline Kennedy, Jackie's daughter, summed it up perfectly, calling Redgate Farm the perfect expression of my mother's romantic and adventurous spirit. The estate became a retreat for 3 generations of the Kennedy clan, offering a chance to revel in the stunning natural setting and bond as a family. Fast forward to 2000, and Caroline Kennedy decided to give the estate a modern twist while keeping its New England charm intact. She brought in architect Deborah Burke to renovate and expand the main house, ensuring it met the needs of today's family while staying true to its roots. Now, the estate evolved under Caroline's watch. focused on nurturing native plants, trees, animals, and birds. In 2019, Caroline decided it was time for a new chapter and put Redgate Farm on the market with a $65 million price tag. With its breathtaking beauty, diverse amenities, and rich history, the estate stands as one of New England's most coveted properties. And as it moves into its next phase, it remains a symbol of Jackie Kennedy Onassis's passion for nature and family, a legacy of elegance, grace, and environmental stewardship. In the crisp autumn of 1968, the shimmering waters of the Ionian Sea bore witness to an extraordinary union. On the secluded island of Scorpios, Greek shipping tycoon Aristotle Onassis and America's widowed First Lady Jacqueline Kennedy vowed to intertwine their destinies. But the event was far from the enchanting scenes one might imagine. It was a wedding that sent ripples of shock across the high societies of Europe and the United States, jarring the elite and captivating the public imagination. You see, Jacqueline, at 39, had been the radiant heart of Camelot, her grace underlined by tragedy following the assassination of President Kennedy. And her choice to marry 62-year-old Onassis, a man ensnared by controversy, seemed to many a sordid betrayal of her image. In American eyes, he was the epitome of ruthless ambition, a man clawing his way through the power echelons without regard for decorum. But for Jackie, he was a source of comfort and support in a tumultuous decade. As they stood together, the couple embodied an enigma that would forever alter their legacies, melding tragedy, controversy, and an undeniable allure into the annals of 20th century law. In today's episode, we'll dive deep into the social dynamics, wealth, and woe of this iconic old money saga, as we describe the life of Jackie Kennedy during the Onassis years. In the fall of 1963, amidst the shimmering waves of the Mediterranean, Jacqueline Kennedy first encountered Aristotle Onassis aboard the Christina, his luxurious yacht. And this meeting, facilitated by her sister, Lee Radziwill, who was rumored to have her own intimate history with the Greek tycoon, marked the beginning of a complex web of relationships that would captivate the world's attention. You see, Lee Radziwill, born Caroline Lee Bouvier, was the epitome of high society elegance and allure, and her social orbit included a dazzling array of artists, celebrities, and the affluent elite. And Onassis, known for his expansive shipping empire and one of the wealthiest men of his era, presented a stark contrast to Lee's polished American aristocracy. Thus, the early 1960s saw Lee and Onassis in what was rumored to be more than just a casual acquaintance. Notably, during a 1963 European tour with President John F. Kennedy, Jackie's husband, which included stops in countries like England and Italy, speculation about Lee and Onassis's relationship intensified. And Vanity Fair later reported that Lee might have harbored hopes for a more significant commitment from Onassis, a narrative that remained woven through rumors and conjecture. This backdrop of rumored romance set the stage for what would become one of the most talked about alliances of the decade, when Aristotle Onassis eventually shifted his affections from Lee to Jacqueline Kennedy. Jackie Kennedy's path from dating Aristotle Onassis to eventually marrying him was paved with profound personal tragedy and a quest for a secure refuge for herself and her children. First, in the summer of 1963, before the cataclysmic events that would later define her public and private life, Jackie faced heartbreak with the death of her infant son, Patrick, which plunged her into a deep depression. In October of that same year, while still First Lady and wife to President John F. Kennedy, Jackie met Aristotle Onassis for the first time during a vacation arranged by her sister aboard his yacht, Christina, and this meeting would later prove fateful, laying the groundwork for a relationship built amidst shared spaces of grief and recovery. Tragedy struck again just weeks after this meeting, when President Kennedy was assassinated on the 22nd of November 1963 in Dallas, a harrowing event that left Jackie by his side in his final moments. This devastating loss pushed her deeper into despair, marking a period of severe depression that would echo throughout her subsequent years. Now, directly after the assassination, Jackie's first love interest was, reportedly, with architect John Carl Warnecke, a man Jackie worked with closely to design the eternal flame at JFK's Arlington National Cemetery gravesite. And during this period, their professional relationship blossomed into a personal one, marked by shared grief and an emotional bond that led to discussions of marriage during a 1966 trip to Hawaii. However, financial strains and differing expectations about their future ultimately led to the dissolution of their romantic involvement, with Warnecker outright admitting that he was in extreme debt and could not provide the lavish lifestyle Jackie was used to. It was during this vulnerable time that Aristotle Onassis reached out to Jackie, offering not just comfort, but a promise of stability and privacy away from the relentless public eye. And his offer came as a critical turning point for Jackie, providing her with a sanctuary where she could seek refuge from the lingering trauma of her past losses. Furthermore, Onassis's idea coincided with a time in which Jackie's concerns for her and her children's safety were growing, especially as she continued to be a target for the paparazzi. Therefore, her relationship with Onassis deepened, rooted in his promise of protection and an escape from the ever-watchful eye of the public and media. But this bond gained new urgency following the assassination of Robert F. Kennedy, Jackie's brother-in-law, on the 5th of June, 1968. His death not only rekindled her fears for her family's safety, but also triggered another bout of depression, reminiscent of her state following JFK's assassination. Haunted by the fear of her children becoming targets and desperate to escape the trauma that seemed to follow the Kennedys, Jackie famously expressed her determination to leave the United States. By the summer of 1968, she saw Onassis not just as a partner, but as a guardian of her and her children's well-being. Then their wedding took place on the 20th October 1968 on the Greek island of Scorpios, in a ceremony designed to emphasize discretion and intimacy, attended only by close family and friends. However, the marriage ignited a storm of public opinion. For one, by marrying Onassis and changing her last name, Jackie lost her entitlement to Secret Service protection as the widow of a US president, exposing her to considerable adverse publicity. Further controversy surrounded the union due to Onassis's previous divorce. His former wife, Athena Onassis, was still living, sparking unfounded fears of Jackie's excommunication by the Roman Catholic Church, a notion dispelled by Boston's Archbishop Cardinal Richard Cushing as nonsense. Despite the controversies, Jackie found in her marriage to Onassis the financial security and emotional backing necessary to rebuild her life, and Onassis was diligent in ensuring that Jackie's children maintained their Kennedy connections, and he supported her personal pursuits, including her successful foray into the publishing industry. But Jackie and Onassis's marriage, while filled with moments of closeness, was not without its challenges. Jackie's years with Aristotle were filled with the highest of highs and the lowest of lows. One notable difficulty was their significant age difference. Onassis was 63 and Jackie was 39 at the time of their marriage. And this gap sparked endless speculations about their relationship's dynamics, portraying Jackie as vulnerable and dependent on Onassis's wealth for her and her children's well-being. Yet Jackie was far from a mere figurehead in their relationship. Her influence as a revered public figure and her adept social skills were assets that Onassis appreciated as they navigated the elite circles of society together. Furthermore, Jackie used her position to champion cultural preservation and engage in publishing, while Onassis enjoyed the doors that her status opened in the lofty realms of global influence. However, the marriage faced internal strains, primarily due to Onassis's frequent absences and rumored infidelities, which left Jackie longing for more consistent companionship and emotional support. Yet, life with Aristotle Onassis was also renowned for its opulent experiences and the expansive array of properties he amassed across the globe. For example, his penchant for luxury was epitomized in his acquisition of Scorpios, a private island in the Ionian Sea which he purchased in 1962. Onassis transformed this once barren isle into a veritable paradise, replete with a grand villa, guest houses, and even a helipad, creating a secluded haven for his family and distinguished guests. And it was here, as we mentioned, that he wed Jacqueline Kennedy in 1968. Beyond Scorpios, Onassis's real estate portfolio was vast and varied, including a historic townhouse on New York City's Upper East Side, previously owned by John D. Rockefeller Jr., and a myriad of residences in glamorous cities like Paris, London, and Monte Carlo. He also boasted ownership of a castle in the south of France, enhancing his reputation as a global tycoon. Additionally, Jacqueline Kennedy Onassis, no stranger to luxury herself, brought her own prestigious properties into the marriage. She had grown up in a palatial apartment at 740 Park Avenue in Manhattan, one of the city's most sought-after addresses, constructed by her grandfather. And following her union with Onassis, she maintained a New York base, acquiring a sprawling 14-room apartment at 1040 Fifth Avenue, with sweeping views of Central Park. The couple also enjoyed escapes to Lasata, a grand estate in East Hampton, which had been in Jacqueline's family since 1925. And thus, Jackie's years as an Onassis were a complex interplay of lavish luxury and frustrating self-doubt, as the highly flawed but wonderfully charismatic Greek magnate spun his yarn both publicly and privately. The final chapter of Aristotle Onassis's life was marked by deep personal tragedy, with the loss of his son Alexander in a plane crash in 1973, which precipitated a rapid decline in his health. And Onassis succumbed to respiratory failure on the 15th of March 1975 in Paris at the age of 69. Now, the complexities of his estate were immediately felt by Jacqueline Kennedy Onassis due to restrictions under Greek law on what a non-Greek surviving spouse could inherit. After 2 years of legal negotiations, she settled for $26 million from Christina Onassis, Aristotle's daughter and sole heir, relinquishing any further claims. Then, Jacqueline's life post-Aristotle was a blend of return to her roots and new ventures. She permanently relocated back to the United States, dividing her time among Manhattan, Martha's Vineyard, and the Kennedy compound in Hyannisport, Massachusetts. In 1975, Jacqueline embarked on a new career path as a consulting editor at Viking Press, though she resigned 2 years later amid controversies over the publication of a novel involving a fictional assassination plot against Ted Kennedy. Her career in publishing continued at Doubleday, where she worked as an associate editor and influenced a wide array of publications, including Larry Gonick's The Cartoon History of the Universe and works by notable figures such as Carly Simon and Diana Vreeland. Additionally, Jacqueline also remained active in public life and cultural preservation. She notably led efforts to save Grand Central Terminal from demolition in the 1970s and opposed the construction of a skyscraper that would overshadow Central Park in the 1980s. Her commitment to historic preservation was therefore widely recognized and celebrated, including her efforts to save Olana, the home of artist Frederick Edwin Church. Yet, despite withdrawing from much of her former public political engagement, Jacqueline made exceptions, such as her involvement in Ted Kennedy's 1980 presidential campaign and her support for Bill Clinton in the early 1990s. She also offered guidance to Hillary Clinton on managing life in the White House with a young child. In the later years of her life, Jacqueline faced personal health challenges. She was diagnosed with non-Hodgkin's lymphoma in December 1993 and underwent chemotherapy. Her condition worsened rapidly, and she sadly passed away on the 19th of May 1994 in her Manhattan apartment, surrounded by her loved ones. Jacqueline's funeral was then held at the Church of St. Ignatius Loyola, the same church where she had been baptized and confirmed, and she was laid to rest in Arlington National Cemetery alongside her first husband, President Kennedy, and their children Patrick and Arabella. On a languid November day in 1988, the opulent yet tumultuous life of Christina Onassis, the sole heiress to the Onassis shipping empire, ended abruptly in a friend's home in Argentina. And at just 38 years old, her existence, drenched in opulence yet marred by profound sadness, ended with a heart attack, perhaps the final toll of a lifetime marred by relentless dieting and substance misuse. You see, Christina was born into a dynasty where destiny was not just about immense wealth, but also about steering the behemoth that was the Onassis shipping empire. And from her early days, she was shaped to be as tough and enduring as the steel hulls of the vessels that bore her family's name, expected to navigate a world dominated by shrewd businessmen. Despite her prowess in this fierce realm, Christina's personal life was far from tranquil, scarred by a series of marriages that each ended in heartbreak, adding layers of sorrow to her already complex life. Indeed, her journey was one of stark contrasts, from glittering socialite events and luxurious yachts to private moments filled with despair. In today's episode, we feature the life of a tragic heiress, whose life was a relentless quest for something more profound than the wealth she was granted, as we describe. Christina Onassis, the $1.3 billion heiress who couldn't find happiness. Christina Onassis was born under the lingering shadow of a family marked by both maritime greatness and personal tragedy. Her father's side, with the surname Onassis rooted in the Greek Nassos meaning island, hinted at the seafaring destiny that would propel her family's fortunes. And her grandparents, Socrates and Penelope, had once thrived in Smyrna, now Izmir, Turkey, amidst the bustling trade routes of the Ottoman Empire. Yet they fled to Greece as refugees after the Greco-Turkish War and the devastating Great Fire of Smyrna in 1922, which obliterated their wealth and altered their lives forever. On her mother's side, Christina was equally descended from shipping royalty, and the maternal grandfather, Stavros G. Livanos, had forged the powerful Livanos shipping empire, further entrenching the family in the realm of nautical enterprise. Thus her father, Aristotle Onassis, emerged from the ashes of lost fortunes in Smyrna to seek a new beginning in Buenos Aires in 1923. And with only $250 in his pocket, he found work as a telephone operator while studying commerce. His entrepreneurial spirit soon led him to the tobacco trade, laying the groundwork for a fortune that would see him become a millionaire by the age of 25. Aristotle then turned his gaze to the seas, founding his first shipping company and capitalizing on the economic downturn of the Great Depression to expand his fleet. Then in 1946, Aristotle's marriage to Athena Mary Livanos, known as Tina, united two powerful Greek shipping dynasties. Their lavish New York wedding was a spectacle of wealth and promise, yet it was shadowed by personal challenges, including Aristotle's affair with the famed opera singer Maria Callas. Born on the 11th of December 1950 in New York City, Christina thus entered a world where opulence was commonplace, and her childhood was anything but ordinary. Her dolls were adorned in Christian Dior, and she played with ponies gifted by kings. And her young life aboard their majestic 320-foot yacht Christina, named in her honor, was a whirl of luxury and loneliness, a golden cage of splendor where she was affectionately known as my golden one. Yet despite the abundance of material comforts, Christina's life was imbued with the poignant solitude. Father Aristotle was often away, engulfed by his shipping empire, while Tina was swept up in the glittering social whirl of high society. This absence of familial warmth, then, left young Christina navigating a sea of wealth, searching for shores of emotional connection. But Christina's education spanned continents and languages, reflecting her family's international stature. She studied at prestigious institutions from New York to Switzerland, becoming fluent in Greek, English, French, Spanish, and Italian, yet the emotional undercurrents of her upbringing were complex and often stormy. Then the unraveling of her parents' marriage in 1960, amid public scandals linked to her father's romantic liaisons, marked the next turbulent chapter in her young life. Christina Onassis lived a life that, from the outside, seemed bathed in luxury, yet was often shadowed by profound solitude and personal turmoil. You see, her childhood unfurled across the globe, between her mother's opulent homes in London, Paris, and Athens, and her father Aristotle Onassis's lavish properties such as the spectacular villa in Monaco and their sprawling estate in Argentina. Yet it was aboard her father's legendary yacht, the Christina, that she perhaps felt most at home, albeit in a world that spun on an axis of gold rather than grounded reality. Aristotle often called Christina his golden girl, a term of endearment that belied the immense expectations placed upon her. This nickname was not just a reference to her privileged status, but also a nod to his hope that she would shine brightly in the tough world of shipping magnates. However, these expectations wove a fabric of pressure that intensified her personal battles with insecurity and body image, made all the more daunting by the relentless glare of public and media scrutiny. And Christina Onassis's quest for love mirrored the restless waves her family navigated, each marriage a stormy passage that ultimately left her adrift. She walked down the aisle 4 times, her heart full of hope, only to return each time to the loneliness she had hoped to escape. Her first foray into marriage was with Joseph Bulker, a seasoned real estate developer who was 27 years her senior. Swept away by a whirlwind of romance at the tender age of 20, Christina believed she had found a partner who could navigate the complexities of her world. Yet the marriage quickly foundered under the weighty disapproval of her father, Aristotle Onassis, who saw Bulker as unsuitable for his golden girl. Therefore, despite the initial passion, Christina's union with Bulker was dissolved just 9 months later, the romance unable to withstand the pressures imposed by her formidable father. Her second attempt at love was with Alexander Andreadis, the scion of Greek shipping and banking, and their marriage seemed a perfect alignment of similar backgrounds and shared understandings. However, the relationship was marred by differences and high expectations, unraveling just after 14 months. Then in 1978, Christina turned to Sergei Kauzov, a Russian shipping agent whose mysterious allure and shared industry interests drew her in. This third marriage, sparked by a connection over shared professional terrain, flickered out almost as quickly as it had ignited. Their union, lasting scarcely a year, was a symbol of the challenges of merging lives that, while similar on the surface, were vastly different at their core. And the fourth and final marriage was to Thierry Rousseau, a French pharmaceutical heir, in 1984. This relationship, seemingly grounded in a mutual desire for family and stability, led to the birth of Christina's only child, Athena. Yet this union too was marred by betrayal. Russell's infidelity, a bitter pill, was underscored by the birth of 2 children with his mistress during his marriage to Christina, and the revelation of his dual life was a crushing blow to Christina, who had yearned for a loyal partner with whom to share her complex world. Their marriage dissolved before 3 years had passed, leaving Christina with the joy of motherhood but the familiar sting of marital failure. Through each marriage, Christina sought the stability and love that seemed perpetually just beyond her reach. Her romantic endeavors, like the shifting tides of the sea her family mastered, were fraught with storms of disappointment and the debris of broken promises. Even more tragedy struck with the sudden deaths of her beloved brother Alexander in a plane crash in 1973, and her mother a year later, casting long shadows over her spirit. These losses culminated with her father's death in 1975, leaving her to mournfully declare, "I am all alone in the world now." These back-to-back losses plunged Christina into a deep emotional turmoil that profoundly affected her mental health. However, despite history remembering Christina mostly for her struggles, initially she helmed the Onassis empire with skill, as we'll see in the next chapter. Although Christina Onassis was born into the whirlwind of New York's elite, she chose to relinquish her American citizenship after her father's death, thus embracing her roots with dual citizenship in Greece and Argentina. This shift marked not just a change in nationality, but also a deeper commitment to her heritage and the vast business empire that was now hers to command. You see, starting in the bustling offices of her father in New York, Christina had been introduced to the intricacies of business and finance at the tender age of 20. Her role began modestly as a secretary, but she was no ordinary administrative assistant. She was an heiress, being groomed for something far greater. After her father's demise, Christina's influence over the Onassis group grew, although it remained unclear in the late 1970s how deeply her authority penetrated the operational machinations of the company and to what extent she delegated to her managers. And professionally, Christina exhibited a rare blend of sophistication and sharpness, steering the colossal Onassis fleet through the tempestuous seas of global commerce with grace and expertise. However, the splendor of her professional life was often overshadowed by personal adversities. Her struggles with weight, her fleeting romantic engagements, and her increasing dependence on a cocktail of medications for depression delineated a life of stark contrasts. But Christina lived in a sphere of extravagant wealth that seemed almost mythical. For example, she once spent $30,000 to dispatch a private jet to the US to ensure a steady supply of Diet Coke. In another instance, driven by a blend of whimsy and wealth, she sent a helicopter from Austria to Switzerland just to retrieve a forgotten David Bowie cassette. And her generosity knew no bounds when it came to maintaining her circle of friends. Christina would lavish as much as $30,000 a month on acquaintances to ensure they could clear their schedules for her. She once confided in Peter Evans, a biographer of her father, that she took pleasure in wearing diamonds even at breakfast. The small yet telling indulgence that spoke volumes of her attempt to weave normalcy into her extraordinary life. But by the age of 30, Christina was diagnosed with clinical depression, a battle she faced behind the closed doors of opulence, often turning to food and undisclosed drugs to soothe her inner turmoil. Therefore, despite the facade of limitless prosperity, Christina's existence was tinged with a poignant solitude that money could not dispel. Towards the end of her life, she decided to get a fresh start and move to Argentina, one of her lineage's homelands, and where we'll pick up in the next chapter. In the twilight of her life, Christina Onassis contemplated a fresh start in Argentina, the land of tango and endless plains. It was November 1988, and she sought solace in the company of friends near Buenos Aires, staying at a secluded country club that promised a brief escape from the relentless spotlight that had followed her since birth. Yet, shockingly, Christina Onassis tragically met her untimely end on the 19th of that month, at the young age of 37, and her final moments unfolded in a mansion in Tortuguitas, just outside the Argentine capital. Discovered lifeless in her bathtub by her maid, the news of her death sent ripples across the world. An autopsy later confirmed the cause, a heart attack brought on by acute pulmonary edema, dispelling rumors of foul play or self-harm. Now, at the time of Christina's death, her daughter Athena Roussel, later known as Athina Onassis, was a mere 3 years old. Raised in the quietude of Switzerland by her father Thierry Roussel and his Swedish wife Gabi Landhage, Athena grew up shielded from the tempestuous legacy that had defined her family. But the passing of Christina precipitated the transfer of an immense fortune to young Athena, an inheritance valued around $250 million at the time. And this inheritance encompassed an array of assets: shipping enterprises, a collection of international real estate, prized artworks, and the verdant Greek island of Scorpios. To safeguard this fortune until Athena reached maturity, the inheritance was entrusted to a cadre of administrators dubbed the Greybeards, selected by Christina herself. Yet this arrangement spawned a series of contentious legal battles that entangled Athena, her father, and the trustees with disputes over financial stewardship and efforts to disconnect Athena from her Hellenic roots. Upon turning 18 in January 2003, Athena assumed control over half of her inheritance, then estimated between $2.7 billion and $3 billion US dollars. The world therefore watched as she was heralded a modern-day Greek princess, becoming one of the wealthiest young women globally. However, despite her vast wealth, Athena has consistently sought to maintain a low profile, often expressing a complicated relationship with her family's storied past. At 13, in a rare moment of openness, she confessed a strong aversion to all things Greek, attributing all the problems to the weight of the Onassis name, a sentiment underscoring the burdensome legacy of her heritage. Christina's remains now rest on the serene island of Scorpios, beside her revered father, Aristotle, and her brother Alexander in the family mausoleum. This sacred spot not only marks the resting place of a storied lineage, but also stands as a poignant reminder of a life that, while draped in wealth and worldliness, yearned for the simpler echoes of peace and belonging. When you imagine becoming the heiress to a monumental old money fortune that spans not one, but two European dynasties, you'd likely envision a life draped in luxury, opulent galas, exclusive parties, and leisurely afternoons on sun-drenched yachts. In this world, perfumed by the salty breeze of the Mediterranean and lined with the silks of couture fashion, we'd like to think. only promises a daily existence wrapped in pleasure and privilege. Yet, for Athina Onassis, a descendant of the storied Onassis and Niarchos Greek shipping dynasties, this fantasy was far from reality. Born into wealth that most can only dream of, Athena's life was quickly overshadowed by familial discord and tragedy. For instance, her mother, Christina, led a life marked by emotional turmoil and untimely passing, leaving young Athena with a legacy tinged with sorrow rather than just splendor. Then, inheritance disputes soon followed, entangling Athena's billion-dollar birthright in legal battles and public scrutiny. Worse still, her marriage, which should have been a fairy tale continuation of her storied lineage, crumbled under the weight of betrayal when her husband was reportedly unfaithful. In today's episode, we'll unveil the secrets of this iconic old money heiress, from her 18th birthday celebration that reportedly racked in at least $1 billion to the enigmatic troubles of one of the 21st century's most private heiresses, as we describe, Athina Onassis, the billionaire heiress who can't escape drama. Welcome to the world of Athina Onassis, where money doesn't just talk, it launches 1,000 ships. And Athena, the last in line of the legendary Aristotle Onassis fortune, stands uniquely at the confluence of not one, but two of the grandest shipping empires Greece has ever seen. Imagine, if you will, the colossal weight of inheritance from the Onassis and the Niarchos families, two names that could comfortably fund their own small countries, and often come close in the form of owning lavish Greek islands. Now, Athena's maternal lineage is a stroll down millionaire's lane, directly leading to Aristotle Onassis, the titan of shipping, who not only collected ships and cash, but also managed to woo Jacqueline Kennedy into a high-profile marriage. And when Aristotle's curtain fell in 1975, he left behind a cool $500 million, chump change by today's billionaire-heavy standards perhaps, but a whopping $2.3 billion when adjusted for inflation. His daughter Christina, Athena's mother, initially held the reins to this fortune until her own untimely demise in 1988, at which point young Athena, a mere tot, became the heiress to what might just be the mother of all piggy banks. But wait, there's more. Athena is not just an Onassis. Through her grandmother, Tina Livanos, she's tied to another behemoth of the seas, Stavros Niarchos, a man whose rivalry with Aristotle was the stuff of Greek legend, with enough plot twists to make a soap opera blush. And Niarchos, who built supertankers as if they were Lego sets, left behind a treasure trove worth $12 billion, ensuring the family gatherings were probably more about asset management than passing the salt. Now, the spoils of this family feud are, in part, real estate galore, mansions in Paris, Geneva, and a little seaside retreat on Ibiza, just for the summer, mind you. And then there was Scorpios, a Greek island so idyllic that Aristotle and Jackie O treated it as their personal Eden. At least, that is until 2013, when Athena handed over the keys to Scorpios to Russian billionaire Ekaterina Rybolovleva, for what we assume was a minor trifle of $150 million. And because no billionaire's tale is quite complete without mentioning troves of twinkling baubles, Athena's story includes a dazzling array of jewels and a smattering of high art. Rodins here, Impressionists there, the sort of collection that would make even the most seasoned auctioneer weak at the knees. Despite this gold-plated, jewel-encrusted, island-hopping heritage, Athina Onassis tries to keep it low-key, shying away from the glare of the public eye. And yet, all that glitters is not gold in Greece, and Athina Onassis's lineage is chock full of high seas drama, heart-wrenching tragedy, and much more. In the next chapter, we'll roll back the clock and explain how this 21st century heiress has one of the most fascinating backstories we've ever featured on this channel. In the 21st century, Athina Onassis stands at a perilous crossroads, the last of her name, the final heir to the intertwined legacies of two of Greece's most powerful dynasties. Thus, her story is not just hers alone, but a shadowy reflection of two giants, Aristotle Onassis, her grandfather, and Stavros Niarchos, the man who both rivaled and mirrored him in ways that went far beyond mere business. First, Aristotle Onassis, the man who emerged from the ashes of Smyrna, was a force of nature. His journey from a modest start in the bustling ports of what is now Izmir to ruling one of the most formidable shipping empires was nothing short of legendary. And Onassis was more than a businessman. He was a master strategist, a man whose every move was calculated to propel him higher, farther. You see, his marriage to Athena Livanos, the daughter of another shipping magnate, was no simple union of love. It was a strategic alliance, a move that solidified his power within the Greek shipping elite. On the other side was Stavros Niarchos, born into an affluent Athenian family whose eyes were set on the future of global trade. Niarchos was no less ambitious than Onassis, and he too understood the power of strategic marriages. His vision, however, lay in the vast potential of oil transportation, leading him to build a fleet of supertankers that could rival the empire Onassis had painstakingly constructed. Therefore, Niarchos too tied his fate to the Livanos family, marrying Eugenia Livanos, sister to Onassis's wife, and in doing so, he stepped into a rivalry that would become legendary. But the marriages of these two men to the Livanos sisters were not mere social contracts. They were declarations of war, battles fought not with weapons, but with wealth, influence, and legacy. Onassis, never one to shy away from the public eye, cemented his place on the world stage with his marriage to Jacqueline Kennedy, the widow of a fallen American president. This union was a masterstroke, linking him to the world's most powerful political dynasty, a move that resonated across oceans and continents. Yet, their battle was not confined to the seas or the sprawling empires they built. The heirs to these legacies have been shaped in the crucible of this rivalry. Athena Onassis, the last of her line, has chosen a path of discretion, distancing herself from the world her ancestors dominated. Her Niarchos cousins, however, have embraced the public eye, continuing their family's tradition of philanthropy and influence through the Stavros Niarchos Foundation. And yet it was the many would say wild upbringing of Athena's mother, Christina Onassis, that would have the biggest effect on the young heiress's life. Christina Onassis, Athena's mother, entered the world on the 11th of December 1950 in New York City as a child born into the heights of wealth and influence. At the time, her father, Aristotle Onassis, was among the richest men alive, and her mother, Athena Livanos, was the daughter of another aforementioned shipping titan. Thus, Christina's life began in a swirl of luxury, with homes scattered across Paris, Greece, and England. Yet, beneath the surface of this glittering existence, shadows loomed. You see, her parents' marriage, troubled by her father's notorious affair with the opera singer Maria Callas, unraveled when Christina was just 10 years old. And this scandal, played out under the harsh light of public scrutiny, left Christina feeling humiliated. Then, the 1960s were marked by a difficult relationship between Christina and her father. Aristotle Onassis, a man known for his overbearing nature, had high expectations for his daughter, and he intended for her to take over the family empire one day. Yet, while Christina admired her father, their bond was often strained. The tension between them only deepened when Aristotle married Jacqueline Kennedy in 1968. Neither Christina nor her brother Alexander trusted their new stepmother, and they never grew close to her. Therefore, this already fragile family structure was shattered further when Alexander died in a plane crash in 1973, a tragedy that devastated both Christina and her father. The following years brought more sorrow, with the death of her mother in 1974 and her father's passing in 1975. Consequently, Christina was left alone to bear the weight of the Onassis fortune, a burden that would follow her for the rest of her life. Then, the 1970s and 1980s were turbulent years for Christina, marked by a series of troubled marriages. Her first marriage, at just 20 years old, was to Joseph Bolker, a real estate developer who was 27 years older than her, and this union, reportedly disapproved of by her father, lasted a mere 9 months. After her father's death, Christina married Alexander Andreadis, a Greek shipping heir, but this marriage also ended in divorce after just over a year. Her third marriage, to Sergei Kauzov, a Russian shipping agent, fared no better, lasting from 1978 to 1979. But it was in 1984 that Christina entered into her fourth and final marriage with Thierry Roussel, a French businessman and the future father of Athena. Now, Thierry Roussel, born on the 16th of February 1953 in Neuilly-sur-Seine, France, came from a prominent family involved in the pharmaceutical industry. His father, Henri Roussel, led a company responsible for developing the controversial drug RU486, and Thierry's mother, Francine Grinda, was part of a well-connected family, with her father being the French politician Édouard Grinda. Thierry had two sisters, Patricia and Christine, with the latter becoming a duchess, in fact, and he completed his high school education in 1972 and studied economics at Panthéon-Assas University. Now, Athena's parents, Thierry and Christina, first crossed paths as teenagers, but their lives took different directions before reconnecting in the early 1980s. And despite Thierry's relationship with the Swedish model Marianne Gaby Landage, Christina eventually won him over, and they married in 1984. This marriage, however, was troubled from the start. Christina seemed deeply infatuated with Thierry, but his ongoing affair with Landage and his disinterest in a genuine marital relationship cast a long shadow over their union. Their honeymoon in the Caribbean was the beginning of a rocky marriage. Christina's mental health issues, coupled with Thierry's infidelities, made for a volatile relationship. The couple had one child, Athina Onassis Roussel, born in 1985. However, their marriage deteriorated rapidly, and divorce proceedings began just 8 months after Athena's birth. Christina, desperate to keep the marriage alive, went so far as to financially support Thierry and even proposed a shared arrangement with Landage, but these efforts were in vain. The divorce was finalized in 1987, but the complex and troubled relationship between Christina and Thierry continued until her death in 1988. It was within this tragic set of circumstances, despite being raised into immense wealth, that one Christina Onassis would grow up. Christina Onassis was born on the 29th of January 1985 in the American Hospital of Paris, located in Neuilly-sur-Seine, France. And from the moment she took her first breath, she was the living continuation of a legacy steeped in wealth and power, as she was the only heir of Aristotle Onassis. Yet Athena's early years were shadowed by misfortune and complications that would shape her life in ways few could imagine. As mentioned previously, her parents' marriage was filled with problems, yet Athena, oblivious to the adult chaos surrounding her, was baptized on Scorpios, the island that symbolized her family's immense fortune and influence. Then, at the tender age of 3, Athena's life took a cruel turn. Her mother, Christina Onassis, passed away suddenly in November 1988, the victim of pulmonary edema. This tragic event left Athena as the last direct link to the Onassis fortune, an inheritance that would later place her among the wealthiest young women in the world. With Christina gone, the responsibility of raising Athena fell to her father, Thierry Roussel, who had by then committed himself to Gaby Landage, the woman who had once been his mistress and was now his wife. As she grew, Athena's existence was a peculiar mix of unimaginable wealth and efforts at a normal childhood. The family settled in Lucy-sur-Morge, Switzerland, where she attended school, mingling with other children who had no idea of the empire that awaited her. But Roussel, perhaps in an effort to shield her from the corrupting influence of too much money too soon, ensured that Athena received no more pocket money than her half-siblings. Indeed, it was a curious upbringing for a girl who one day would control a fortune that spanned continents. Her education was carefully curated, leading her to a preparatory course in Brussels, Belgium, and it was here that she faced the challenge of the baccalaureate exam, which she successfully passed in the summer of 2003. But Brussels offered more than just academic pursuits. It was in this city that Athena discovered a passion that would become central to her life: equestrian sports. Horses, with their grace and power, captivated her, providing a rare avenue for expression and escape from the pressures of her inheritance. Yet, through these formative years, the Onassis fortune, so vast and intricate, was not hers to control. You see, Christina Onassis always held a certain distrust towards Thierry Roussel, the man her daughter would one day call father. In fact, she saw him as a potential threat, a man whose ambitions could easily veer off course. And to guard against any unwanted surprises, she had the family wealth placed under the watchful eyes of a board of administrators, a group she handpicked herself. The chosen trustees were Stelio Papadimitriou, Paul Ioannidis, Apostolos Zabellas, and Theodore Gabrielides. men who understood the seriousness of their duty. As young Athena grew up, every penny spent in her name required the board's nod of approval. Certainly, it was a system that grated on Father Roussel's nerves, so much so that he once threatened to pack his bags and head back to France, where the estate's tax obligations would have been far steeper. And though she was only 13, Athena already felt a deep resentment towards anything related to her Greek heritage. In one of her rare interviews, she confessed to an Italian magazine that she believed the Onassis name was the root of all her troubles. Then, her stepmother, Gabi Landhager, confirmed this sentiment during an appearance on American television, recounting how Athena had once said that if she could, she would burn every last dollar of the Onassis fortune. Yet on her 18th birthday, Athena assumed control of her portion of her mother, Christina Onassis's estate, estimated to be worth between $700 million and $1 billion, instantly making her one of the wealthiest individuals in the world. However, another battle began after she turned 21 in 2006, when her lawyers attempted and failed to secure her position as president of the Onassis Foundation. In fact, the board was unyielding, deeming her unqualified and asserting that she had no legitimate claim to Aristotle Onassis's estate. They cited her lack of connection to Greek culture, unfamiliarity with the language, absence of formal education, and complete lack of work experience as evidence of her unsuitability. They even invoked the memory of her late uncle Alexander, arguing that Athena had little in common with the legacy left by her grandfather. Yet, despite the intense legal battles and challenges Athena Onassis faced in her quest to become president of the Onassis Foundation after her 21st birthday, she did receive the remainder of her inheritance at that time. And regarding romance, around the same time, in March 2003, Onassis found herself drawn to Álvaro de Miranda Neto, a Brazilian showjumper with 2 Olympic medals to his name. The relationship quickly grew serious, and she made the move to São Paulo, purchasing a luxurious duplex with sweeping views of Ibirapuera Park for $8.6 million. By December 2005, the two were married in a ceremony brimming with Brazilian VIPs and equestrian friends. Yet, absent were her father and stepmother. The couple, suspiciously uninterested in extravagant gifts, encouraged their guests to make charitable donations instead. But the marriage didn't last. By 2016, the couple had separated following allegations of infidelity on Miranda's part, and the ensuing divorce was swift and complex, with Onassis securing the services of the formidable lawyer Robert Stephen Cohen. Legal battles spilled into the courts of Antwerp, Belgium, where Onassis had been living. Miranda contested the prenuptial agreement and demanded alimony, while disputes over the ownership of their horses added further complications. The divorce was finally settled in November 2017, and Onassis returned to Greece to start anew. Yet, despite the personal turmoil, Athena remained steadfast in her pursuit of equestrian excellence. Indeed, she had been a competitive showjumper since childhood, and in 2001 she claimed second place in an event in Jerez, Spain. Competing under the Greek flag for the Avlona Riding Club in Athens, she continued to make her mark. Even a spinal injury in 2012 couldn't keep her from representing Greece in the European Show Jumping Championships in 2013 and the World Championships in 2014. Therefore, Athena Onassis has carved out her own space in the world of equestrian sports, not just as a competitor, but also as a patron. The Athena Onassis International Horse Show, established in 2007 in São Paulo, eventually found its home on the glamorous shores of Pampelon Beach in Saint-Tropez by 2014. The horse breeding and training business she co-owned with her former husband in Belgium, AD Sport Horses, continued to operate, a lasting symbol of her enduring connection to the sport.